Welcome to the debate. Today we're wrestling with something pretty disturbing. It's the 2006 satirical film Idiocracy. And what's disturbing is how it's gone from this, absurd comedy to what a lot of people see as a genuine, prophetic warning about where we're headed.
It really has. I mean, it's become a cultural shorthand. You see people reference it daily to describe, well, some political or corporate decision that just makes no sense. It's moved from dark comedy to chilling commentary.
Exactly. And that brings us to our central question today. Is this confluence of declining cognitive performance, our deep reliance on technology, and just unchecked corporate power, is it driving us irreversibly toward that idiocracy future? Or is this something that can be fixed? I'm going to argue that the data, particularly on literacy, shows that this trajectory is, well, nearly inevitable.
And I'm going to take a different tack. I'll be arguing that the film's core premise is a bit too simple, maybe even touching on eugenics, and that the decline we're seeing is primarily environmental. That means there are still off-ramps, if we have the political will to take them. We're on a bad road, sure, but the destination isn't set in stone.
Okay, so I have to ground my position in the numbers. Because this isn't just a feeling. We're seeing a quantifiable cognitive collapse. The reverse Flynn effect is real. IQ scores are actually going down. But the more immediate problem is functional competence. The PAAC data, that's the Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies, it shows that U.S. adults' average literacy scores fell by 12 points between 2017 and 2023.
That's a huge drop in such a short time.
It is. And it's the reason why a staggering 54% of U.S. adults now read below a 6th grade level. So, the inability to understand complex text or instructions isn't some future threat. It's here. And this is where the film gets it right. Its whole premise, the intelligent couple endlessly debating having kids while others just don't, that, combined with this literacy collapse, it validates the whole age of ignorance. We're actively penalizing being informed, calling it elitist. The environment is already there.
I absolutely agree that the illiteracy rate is a catastrophe. 48 million adults reading below a 3rd grade level. That's a crisis. But I have to challenge the idea that this is some inevitable genetic collapse, like the film's opening implies. The data points much more clearly to environmental and cultural factors. And those are things we can theoretically reverse. The problem we're facing is one of literacy and critical thinking, not, a drop in raw inherent intelligence.
And you really think that can be turned around?
I think the loop can be broken because it's a policy failure loop, not a biological one. Look at the film's big crisis, the Brondo catastrophe. That wasn't about everyone being too stupid to figure out plants need water. It was about corporate determinism. And we see that today. Billions spent on lobbying by agribusiness, by food companies, all to maintain a corrupt system that puts profit over public health. The problem isn't that citizens are universally stupid. It's that they are systematically misinformed by a broken system. That's a political problem.
Acceleration of cognitive decline by AI.
Well, let's talk about the system's newest accelerant then, artificial intelligence, because I think AI is poised to push this decline far beyond what any environmental factor could do. It's making the knowledge base itself brittle.
I agree AI is a huge risk, but I'd frame it a bit differently. To me, AI is mostly an amplifier of bad thinking, not the source of it. We're already seeing data suggesting that users with high confidence in AI tools actually show lower critical thinking. There's an inverse correlation there, because they're doing something called cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading, what do you mean by that exactly?
It's basically transferring mental effort. Deep memory, complex problem solving, you just hand it over to an external tool. So we get really good at writing the right prompt, but we lose the ability for that deep, reflective thought that actually drives innovation. We have a workforce that's becoming dependent on a system that is actively weakening their critical faculties. It's a behavioral problem.
See, I fundamentally disagree that it's just behavioral. That suggests individual choice can fix this. I'm saying the structural decline is baked in because the knowledge source itself is being poisoned. We're facing the very real risk of what experts call model collapse.
Explain what you mean by model collapse. How does that mirror the film?
It's a degenerative process. An AI model is trained on, the internet. But now the internet is being flooded with content from other, dumber AIs. So the next generation of AI trains on that garbage, and the one after that trains on even worse garbage. It's an unstoppable spiral toward a distorted, low-fidelity version of reality. That is the structural death of our collective knowledge. It's exactly like the future in the film where no one knows how to maintain the technology anymore.
That is a terrifying thought, but it still seems to depend on what we feed it initially.
It gets worse. We are seeing deliberate political mandates to institutionalize this unreality. When policymakers tell AI developers to literally eliminate references to things like misinformation or climate change, they are forcing the technology to deny objective reality. The AI becomes an agent of state-sponsored propaganda. If the system is actively ordering the creation of ignorance, we are way past the point of return. The decline is being engineered.
Corporate determinism and a Brondo economy.
Okay, that point about institutionalized ignorance brings me right back to corporate capture. Because the AI risk is new, but the total victory of corporate interests, that's the old story Idiocracy was telling.
It's the absolute core of the film, right? Brondo owns the FDA, the FCC. It makes sure its product is protected, even if it means killing all the crops. And we are, for all intents and purposes, already there. Agribusiness lobbying has created a system that completely overrides public health. And it's not just food. Look at water. It's under threat of privatization across the country.
That's a compelling argument, but I think it overlooks a key difference. Unlike in the movie, these issues are still being fought, and sometimes successfully. The fact that we're even having a debate about public waterworks shows that community-led initiatives still exist. I mean, yes, corporations are pushing fair market value laws in a dozen states to make it easier to buy up public utilities, and we have huge risks like PFAS contamination.
Right, but how long can a few grassroots victories hold out against a systemic national decline?
Well, there are precedents. Look at Baltimore, where they stopped the Veolia takeover. The fight is still active.
But the fact that privatization is even appealing proves my point. It appeals to these small towns because they are too broke and, frankly, too functionally incompetent to fund their own infrastructure. Their inability to handle the complexity forces them to sell public assets to private interests. The system is decaying from within. The public is losing the capacity to govern itself, so it just hands the keys to Brondo.
I maintain that the impulse to fix it shows the ability to recognize the crisis isn't lost. And here's the data point that proves it. 63% of adult literacy programs have waiting lists because they don't have enough funding. The demand for self-improvement is there. People know there's a problem. The resources are just being deliberately misplaced by the political system. This is a funding failure, not a cognitive one.
The dysgenic premise versus environmental toxicity.
And this policy failure is made so much worse by environmental factors. I really have to push back on the film's demographic premise as the main driver. A lot of scientific literature points to environmental poisons as a much more likely cause of this cognitive decline.
Okay, but let's play that out. If the IQ decline is real, whether it's genetic or environmental, how does that change the outcome? We still end up in the same place.
It changes everything because environmental causes can be fixed. Some research directly links the IQ drop since the 1970s to, and this is a quote, a flooding tide of toxic chemistry. The argument is that neurotoxins in our air, our food, our water are literally poisoning the minds that uphold democracy. That's a far more actionable problem than, trying to control who has kids.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that environmentalism saves us here, because the political system is already inert. Let's say toxicity is the cause. Who is going to implement the massive, decades-long cleanup we would need? We elect politicians who are basically the Camacho archetype. They promote denialism and spectacle. Corporate lobbying ensures polluters keep polluting. The political system is already too broken to solve the problem that's making it dumber.
So you're saying the outcome is guaranteed, even if the root cause is environmental?
Exactly. The cause becomes irrelevant when the political class is incapable of self-correction. Policy is already driven by sound bites and memes, not expertise. So the environment stays toxic and functional intelligence keeps falling. It's a death spiral. And that brings us right to leadership. President Dwayne Lizindo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho. He is the perfect embodiment of anti-intellectual populism. Spectacle over substance. He is the leader a dumbed-down populace inevitably elects. I mean, people make that comparison constantly in our current politics.
It's a powerful point, but I think it misses a really subtle detail in the film's ending. Camacho, for all his absurdity, he was still rational enough to find the smartest man alive, Joe Bowers, and delegate the problem to him.
He delegated after threatening to execute him in a week if he failed. I mean, come on, that is hardly the action of a rational leader.
It's a grotesque system, I agree. But that one act, the ability to defer to expertise when faced with undeniable failure, it suggests that a little bit of rational problem solving is still there, even in that society. That contradicts the idea of a total irreversible collapse. To me, the threat isn't just IQ, it's emotional intelligence, or EQ.
A decline in EQ? What do you mean?
EQ is your ability to manage emotions, handle complexity, self-regulate, all things vital for good decision-making. And we've seen data that suggests EQ has plummeted since the pandemic. It makes a population incredibly susceptible to fear, to tribalism, to manipulation, and it doesn't matter if you can read at a 6th grade level or not. A person with an average IQ but low EQ is a perfect target for the spectacle and fear that brings a Camacho to power.
But that manipulation only works because the low literacy rate prevents people from seeing through the spectacle in the first place. Whether it's IQ or EQ, the result is the same: systemic paralysis and eventually collapse. Conclusion. Look, the evidence for the idiocracy trajectory is just too compelling. You have 54% functional illiteracy. That's a fact. You have AI threatening a model collapse of our entire knowledge base. And you have the real-world Brondo crisis, total corporate capture, ensuring that no complex problems ever get solved. The convergence of these things, I think it suggests we're past the point of a simple policy fix. The momentum is just too strong.
I still believe we have to see Idiocracy as a cautionary tale, not a prophecy. The focus has to be on the causes we can fix, the hypersimplification from our media, the environmental toxins attacking our health, the erosion of critical thinking from cognitive offloading. The path we're on is incredibly dangerous, yes, but the potential to reverse it through real political action, that's the difference between satire and fate.
Well, this debate certainly highlights the challenge of staying informed when, every major cultural and market force is pushing in the opposite direction.
It does, and I think the question for everyone listening is, has the decline in our collective competence, whether you call it cognitive, political, or emotional, has it already made the difficult solutions we need politically impossible to achieve?
Something for everyone to think about. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.